Hello and welcome back to some Project Kermit Gearbox fun times. In part 1, in the workshop, you saw me strip down a gearbox and completely rebuild it. Now we're going to install that gearbox, which means of course taking this gearbox out. Then we've got to split off the transfer box from the gearbox, put the transfer box on the new gearbox and install it back in the vehicle with a new heavy duty clutch. Now normally on a series Land Rover, extracting the gearbox would mean first taking out just about everything here, so the seats but also the seat box, everything's, and then lifting the gearbox out through here, through the passenger door. But when I built Kermit, I put a removable cross member where the gearbox is, so we should be able to do the entire job going down. Still going to be a right faff, but at least being able to drop the gearbox down and having the car lift available to assist is going to make the job bearable. That's the detachable cross member I was on about. That there is the gearbox. This is the transfer box, and we'll take out all of this as one unit. First thing to do is to drain out the oil. You can see this exhaust is going to get right in the way, so we'll do something about that next. There are a few bits that have got come out of the interior, so I'll drop it back down and we'll do that next. So ideally now, I'd bring in a transmission jack, a jack about this tall with claws on it that can engage with the gearbox, and then I'd drop it onto that. But I don't have one of those. I do have the hydraulic trolley, so I'm going to try and use that. So I'm hoping to be able to use this. I'd pump it up. So the trolley is at maximum lift, and then I've chopped it about as far as I'm going to chock it to bring up the height by about that much more. I'm now going to lower the ramp down, and I think the plan is just to put a little bit of weight on the trolley setup, and then I'll disconnect that cross member and we'll see what happens after that. Now what we need is just push the gearbox back that way, disconnect it from the engine. So here we have the rebuilt gearbox, and here we have the one we've just extracted from Kermit. This section here is the transfer box, and we've got to take this off and put it on here. But there's an issue. This transfer box is non-standard. It's a modified casing with high ratio gears in it, and I built this up way before Project Kermit, maybe 10 years ago, and then it just sat on a shelf. It's entirely possible I didn't do a particularly good job of it, because here, see that movement? That means there's a lack of preload on the bearings in there, and the result is the output can move about. Oil bypasses the oil seal, basically, which is why this handbrake is covered in oil. So what I'm trying to say is there's no point me just changing the oil seal. That's not going to cure the problem. We've got to sort this out. So this has got to be stripped down somewhat anyway to remove it from this gearbox. But while we're in there, we'll fix that. So that's good, at least. Something I was concerned about. So this flange here is not worn. I can't feel any grooves in it. So that's good. So once we get rid of this movement, the oil seal should seal. This gear should come out. So with that gear out the way, I can get access to the bolts in here, and the nuts in here rather, and we can get this transfer case off of the main box. This box will provide a few spares for rebuilding that box, but otherwise not needed for now. So what the issue is there's a bearing on this side and there's a bearing on this side. So if you look there, see that movement? If you can hear it over the noise of the compressor, it is making a little clicking noise as well. So there shouldn't be any movement there. That's end float if you can do that, but we don't want end float, we want preload. We want it to be slightly clamped. So as far as parts go, at the moment it seems I'm only going to need an oil seal. In there. Well, depending on what we can do here. So between this housing and this casing here is a shim pack, so some skinny bits of metal which just space out this and stop clamping too much on the bearings. So I think I got to take out one or two of the shims that are in there, and it may well all be alright after that. This is the shim pack I was on about. There's a bunch of these. And like I say, they just space out this housing to reduce the clamping force on the bearings. So I'm going to guess we need at least one of these gone. So in a bit I'm going to have to measure the tension that's in here, but we haven't got any yet, so okay, the end float's gone, but I think it's still spinning too easily. So we need to measure how much effort it takes to do what I'm doing here. And we do that with a bit of string and a spring balance. Found some string, found some scales, and a quick look through the stores. I found 2 oil seals and OEM quality as well. So that's fantastic. I was expecting to have a few days delay whilst ordering these up. I've no idea why I've got these, but I'm glad I have. So the idea is to wrap this string a couple of turns around the selector down here, the selector groove. Actually, let's just put So I reckon this is well under what's required. So we need a 4-pound pulling force to do that. We're on 0. Yeah, that's 6. 6-ounce pull. Try it again. Yeah, 6 ounces. We need 4 pounds. So got to take off another shim, yeah. There we go. That's within spec now. Yeah, let's see. 3.5 to 3.8 once it's underway. So that's well within spec. What we're looking at is 2 to 4, and I wanted to aim more towards 4. Yeah, 3.6, that's fine. Good. So that's 2 shims we took out. So think about it, it may not be down to my incompetence, that might just be down to the bearings settling in after a few thousand miles. But anyway, that's properly set now. There's not only no wiggle on there, no float, but there's also a bit of preload. So that's perfect. So now take this off again and we'll give everything a good clean. I've got to get it all back together quick before I forget how it all goes. We'll change this oil seal first. The next job is to check the end float on the big gear, the intermediate gear that goes in here. So we've got thrust washers and shims. Got to stick these back in. So I'm just going to stick them all in as they were with these little shims, and then we'll see what the end float is on that. The grease is just to hold it in place while it's being assembled. So that goes in like that. There's a big pin. Slide this in without dislodging any of the things that I just put in there. Right, 0.38 end float. But I think if I add a shim in there, it's going to be too tight. Right, I've got a better thrust washer from one of the other boxes. See what that measures. So we're allowed 0.2 millimeters maximum, which is this one. Right. And I can just get that in. Yeah, just get that in with it dragging. So that's good. So we've taken 2 shims out of the speedo, 1 shim out of here, but replaced the thrust washer. So. Right, that's that. Now that comes back out, we'll put that to one side and put this back on. Before we do that, we need to get the selector in. So this goes on there. Which way up? So I've just been checking the operation of the transfer box, the selection between 4-wheel drive and 2-wheel drive, just to make sure it all works now, because I've got an absolute dread of putting this all back in and something being wrong and having to take it all out again. So currently, if I turn the rear here, this would be connected to the rear prop shaft. So I'm turning that, nothing's happening here. So this is 2-wheel drive, and this is the yellow knob lever. So if we push down on that, pushes that up, that's 4-wheel drive. So that's good. And then this one is the red lever, so this is the high-low selector. So pushing that one, and that's now low ratio there, so that's popped out, and that's it. Now we're back in 2-wheel drive. So that's spinning there, there's no effect on that. So you saw me wash these in petrol to get most of the oil off, but you might be able to make out there the shiny bits where it's been out in the sun for a couple of hours. It's actually sweated out some more oil. So that's the idea of sticking it in here. So I put some detergent, engine degreaser in here. If I can fit these in. So this is heated as well. This is up to 80 degrees. Right, it's been in there 20 odd minutes. Yeah, that's looking a lot better. You see how, can you see how matte it is there? So we've lost a lot of oil from in there. I'm going to give it another session. So I'll put the second one in. Put that on there. So we've got holes in the swage block. So pump that like that. Put that on there. This is heavy and it's awkward. I'm not entirely sure I can lift this. Oh, it's such an awkward shape. Yeah. Turns out I can. Got a problem. it's something to do with the high ratio gears that I've got installed, which, because it was so long ago, I've forgotten which ones are which. Look at that, everything's installed. If I move that, this moves, so this is linked, and then if I selected low range, this would pop over here, that would connect to that. But look, nothing is connected to the main box, which is a problem. So I'm guessing that in the high ratio kit there was a bigger one of those. This is what I'm on about. So this is a non-standard part. It all makes sense now. Right, that is what we need. Now I'm going to try and torque it up. So I've set the torque wrench to 100. And I'm going to try and jam the gears with an aluminium tent peg. Because the aluminium is weaker than the teeth, so they shouldn't break. Let's see if we can make it click. Yeah. It's all running nicely. Phew. Right, that's on. Let's put this cover on next. We've used a lovely new one. I think I'll just use the studs. So the idea of this is that it's aluminium like the rest of the casing rather than steel like the original, which has two advantages. One, it's thicker and it's more rigid, so it's less flexible and less likely to open up with any leaks. But two, the idea is that when all this gets hot, this will expand at the same rate as this, so it shouldn't open up and leak. That's the idea anyway. So I bought a whole load of these, the crushable washers. Okay, that go there. This one's now had 2 sessions, and I don't know if you can see it's gone matte all over, so I'm going to call that a win. Yeah, so those shiny patches are gone. I think it's extracted enough oil from the shoe to make it viable again. So, get the fingers out. Done. It's done. It's all together. So before we can actually fit the new gearbox assembly, fit a new clutch. I bought this from LOF and it's a very hardcore clutch. So they do 3 different types: road, power and extreme. And this is the power version, and it's designed for towing, which is what I do a lot of with Kermit. So I have this was just a standard clutch that's in here, and I have had clutch slip, which might be down to the pedal not being adjusted quite right, the pedal box not being adjusted quite right. So that may be my fault. But the point is, it has been slipping under heavy load, so this clutch is probably worn out. And I figured, while we're in here messing about, might as well just upgrade it for something more hardcore. I've never used these people before. This, of course, is not sponsored, like everything with Project Kermit. All bought with my own money, and it was expensive as well. This is a lot more than a standard clutch, but it looks lovely. Very well packaged, and it arrived promptly, so it's a good start. So let's get this off and have a look. That'll be the first step. Oh, it's got wear on it, sure. So, yeah, I'm happy to replace that. That way. So this is marked gearbox side, which is handy. Put that in there, and I'm going to use this. This is the scrap primary pinion, and it's the ideal centering tool. Clutch is in. Right, let's get this bit sorted out. So all this was new when I rebuilt Kermit. I could probably use the release bearing again, but I might as well change it. Oh, this one looks a bit posher. Yeah, it's got more metal on it. So I want a bit of grease on there. So let's do a little bit of grease. And on here. Finally figured out how to fit their wire springs, which do seem a lot better than the plastic clips that were on it before. So now we get that goes in there. On there. Yeah. Bloody close now. We're getting there. Should be able to. It's in, it's dark. The engine and gearbox are coupled together at last, and it slid in nicely as well, which is really good. Oh. So I've done up a few bolts on the bell housing. I'm just going to do what I need to do to secure it all and come back in the morning. So I'll see you then. So the gearbox is in, but of course there's plenty of work to do yet. What I'm going to do is to get the gearbox cross member reinstalled properly, get the bell housing all bolted up, get the clutch slave cylinder installed, and then I want to test the gearbox. So before I put the prop shafts on and put the floor back and everything like that, we can just run up the engine, make sure all the gears select, just for peace of mind before I go ahead and finish the job. So this is how I left it last night. It's just a scissor jack from the car lift onto the cross member. That's all that's holding it in place. But it was like 11 o'clock at night by the time I was doing this, so I was losing enthusiasm. I've got a more serious jack on here now. There we go. Good. I got a full set of these a little while back. I wish I'd done it years ago. Fantastically useful for this sort of thing. It's like a podger at this end for lining up holes, and then a little heel bar at this end for messing about with stuff. So between these and a full set of pry bars, it makes it so much easier than just relying on some old screwdrivers and a crowbar and all the usual stuff. So I've just done the speedo cable, the clutch slave cylinder. I'm going to do the exhaust now, and then we'll drop it down, put some oil in it, and finish the bell housing and fire it up. Time for some oil. Now the transfer box is easy, I'm just going to pour it in for the top. The main gearbox is going to be more of a faff, but we'll get to that. One thing to note, I'm using, this is EP90, but I'm using the grade GL4, which is yellow metal safe. And as you probably saw, there's a lot of bronze in the transfer box and the gearbox. So the latest oil, GL5, is not yellow metal safe. What actually happens, from what I understand, is that it's got an additive in it, in the GL5, which means that the oil sticks really tightly to the gear wheels, which is great, isn't it? Except it sticks so tightly onto the yellow metal that that layer, that microscopic layer, can then peel off. so your gears actually shrink. There's a great deal of debate about how big an effect that actually is in practice, but why take the risk? Right, we need 1.5 litres in the main box. Right, everything is hooked up except the prop shafts, so we should now be able to test out the gearbox and the transfer box. Right, that's a partial success. Most of it's all working fine. The clutch works great. The gears are a tad stiff to get in and out of. Third and fourth seems fine. First and second is stiffer than it should be. Hopefully that will soften up. But reverse is bad, and I think it's this. Yeah, this mechanism's just falling apart. So the reverse gate mechanism that stops you accidentally going into the reverse, that's just broken immediately. So back to the drawing board on that. We'll have to take the gear stick off and take that into the workshop and tinker with it. That's what's gone wrong. You see the hinge there, it's just sort of exploded. Presumably it couldn't cope with the new springs being on there. But I should have another one of these on one of the other gearboxes. So I'll just go and nab that. Saying that, this is the gearbox that we've just taken out, and it's got a different design there. See, those bolts are vertical, not horizontal, so that's, yeah, that's not going to work. Yeah, it's the same on this gearbox. This is a slightly different design. Okay, this bit's the same, the top part, but not the broken bit. Work some grease in there. There it is, all reassembled. What a what a peculiar thing. Probably could have come up with a more elegant design, but hey ho, let's get it back on the truck. Right, I've reinstalled it and I've taken one spring out because I think that's still plenty. Plenty of spring going on there. So first, second, and then push up against the gate and into reverse. Good, sorted. With that sorted, I think it's the prop shafts on next, then reinstate the floor, and I think that's it. Get the floor in, and it's time for a test drive after that. It doesn't crunch through any of the gears, which doesn't sound special at all, does it? But it's never done that before. Oh, it's just so nice. It's stiff. It is stiff going into third and into fourth. But like I say, no crunching. And it'll loosen up in time, I'm sure. But it's so much easier now to engage first from stationary. First to second, no crunch. Down in the first again. And that first hill I came down in second and it stayed in second, it didn't jump out. Second. Third. And into fourth. Very nice. Wow. Bloody brilliant. Such a different feel to it. It is stiff going into the gears, as you'd expect. They're all new gears pretty much. Apart from the synchros, they are all new gears. But no, just precise chunk chunk. No crunching. Brilliant. Very happy with that, very happy. Well, there we go, several days of work, rather a lot of money, but a fantastic result. I'm really chuffed to bits with that. And I am glad I waited to do it. I'm glad I didn't do the gearbox, a complete rebuild of the gearbox during the Project Kermit actual build. Because that was daunting. There's an awful lot of moving parts in the gearbox, and having never done one before, at least doing it like this, I could give it my full attention. So that worked out well, I think. So I've got another gearbox in, well, I've got 2 gearboxes in there, haven't I? But I'm going to build another one there, so I'll have a spare gearbox, just in case. But this is my, this is the premium gearbox with all the good stuff in it. If you want to see a step-by-step guide to rebuilding a gearbox, don't forget, check out Steamwally's channel. And he's got very long videos showing you exactly what to do. And he does it carefully and methodically, and that's I just watched his videos and tried to copy his approach, and look at the result. Brilliant. Right, that's it for now. See you next time. Cheers.